Good afternoon, I'm Charmaine Colvin and you are listening to Apna Radio 93.9 Dublin South FM. On India this week, veteran Indian communist leader V.S. Satyanandan has died at the age of 101. Thousands of people have gathered to pay their respects to the politician who was the founding member of India's largest communist party and a former chief minister of the southern state of Kerala. V.S. is widely regarded as one of the most influential figures in Kerala's political history. Forced to drop out of school as a child, he overcame grinding poverty and torture in police custody to become one of the state's most beloved leaders. Last month, he received treatment after suffering a cardiac arrest. His funeral will be held near his hometown in Alappuzha district with full state honours. Kerala Chief Minister Pinarayi Vijayan from the CPI called Satyanandan a limitless repository of inspiration and lessons. As well as being Kerala's Chief Minister, he was also the state's leader of opposition 3 times and a member of the CPI's Politburo for 23 years. In 1946, he led a revolt against the state authorities in which hundreds of communists were reportedly killed. He was later arrested, tortured and imprisoned for 5 years. His work spanned labour rights, land rights, education, women's rights, anti-corruption measures and environmental protection. The recent release of the preliminary report into the crash of Air India Flight 171, which killed 260 people in June, is continuing to cause speculation, despite key details still remaining unknown. The Wall Street Journal and Reuters have reported that new details in the probe are shifting the focus to the senior pilot in the cockpit. Seconds after takeoff, both fuel control switches on the 12-year-old Boeing 787 abruptly moved to cut-off, cutting fuel to the engines and causing total power loss, a step normally done only after landing. The cockpit captures one pilot asking the other, why did he cut off, to which the person replies that he didn't. Italian newspapers also claimed that its sources had told them the first officer repeatedly asked the captain why he shut off the engines. Sumit Sabiawal, 56, was the captain of the flight, while Clive Kunda, 32, was the co-pilot who was flying the plane. Together, the pilots had more than 19,000 hours of flight experience, nearly half of it on the Boeing 787. Last week, India's Aircraft Accident Investigation Bureau, the lead investigator, stated in a release that certain sections of the international media are repeatedly attempting to draw conclusions through selective and unverified reporting. He described these actions as irresponsible, especially while the investigation remains ongoing. The Indian Commercial Pilots Association condemned the rush to blame the crew as reckless and deeply insensitive, urging restraint until the final report is out. India will resume issuing tourist visas to Chinese citizens this week, the first time in 5 years. In 2020, India had suspended all tourist visas in a bid to contain the spread of COVID-19. In a statement, the Embassy of India in China said that Chinese citizens can now apply for a tourist visa by completing an online application, scheduling an appointment and personally submitting their passport and documents to India visa centres in China. Travel between India and China was significantly disrupted in recent years amid the COVID-19 pandemic, followed by diplomatic tensions over the 2020 Galwan clashes. While Beijing gradually resumed issuing visas to Indian students and businessmen, general travel remained restricted. Bilateral relations between the two countries had plunged to their lowest point since the 1962 war after the Galwan Valley clashes. Following a series of diplomatic and military talks, the two sides withdrew their troops from several friction points along the line of actual control in eastern Ladakh. Last October, the two sides firmed up a disengagement pact for Depsang and Demchok, the last 2 friction points in eastern Ladakh, shortly after Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Chinese President Xi Jinping held talks in Kazan and took a number of decisions to improve ties. Last April, External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar said India and China are moving towards a positive direction in their ties and work needs to be done to normalise the relationship. A court in India has acquitted 12 men who had been convicted in the 2006 Mumbai train bombings that killed 187 people and injured more than 800. Judges had in 2015 sentenced 5 of the accused to death and the remaining 7 to life imprisonment. On Monday, a two-judge bench of the Bombay High Court overturned the earlier order, ruling that the prosecution had utterly failed to establish that the accused had committed the offences for which they had been convicted. The prosecution can appeal against the order in a higher court. On the 11th of July 2006, 7 blasts ripped through busy commuter trains during the evening rush hour in one of India's deadliest militant attacks. Indian security agencies blame the attack on Islamist militants backed by Pakistan, an allegation the country denied. Chinese authorities have begun constructing what will be the world's largest hydropower dam in Tibetan territory in a project that has sparked concerns from India and Bangladesh. According to local media, Chinese Premier Li Qiang presided over a ceremony marking the start of construction on the Yarlung Tsangpo River last weekend. The river flows through the Tibetan Plateau. The project has attracted criticism for its potential impact on millions of Indians and Bangladeshis living downriver, as well as the surrounding environment and local Tibetans. Beijing says the scheme, costing an estimated £125 billion, will prioritise ecological protection and boost local prosperity. When completed, the project, also known as the Motio Hydropower Station, will overtake the Three Gorges Dam as the world's largest and could generate 3 times more energy. Earlier this year, a spokesperson for India's Ministry of External Affairs said they had expressed concerns to China about the impact of mega dams and had urged Beijing to ensure the interests of downstream states were not harmed. They had also emphasised the need for transparency and consultation with downstream countries. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi is visiting London this week to sign a landmark free trade agreement between India and the UK, a pact viewed as a political and economic prize amid global trade tensions unleashed by the US President Donald Trump. For Britain, the deal is its most economically significant trade agreement since leaving the EU, while for India it marks its first major free trade pact outside Asia. For both, analysts say the agreement signals a long-term economic partnership. Under the agreement, 99% of Indian exports to the UK, spanning gems, textiles, engineering goods, leather garments and processed foods, will face zero tariffs. In return, the UK will see phased tariff cuts on 90% of its exports to India. Duties on Scotch whisky will fall from 150% to 75% immediately and to 40% over 10 years. British cars now facing tariffs of more than 100% will see duties slide to 10% under a quota. Other gains include tariff relief on medical devices, pharmaceuticals, aircraft parts and electronics. So that's the news on India this week. You have been listening to Apna Radio 93.9 Dublin South FM.